Welcome to another In Wheel Time podcast, a 30-minute mini version of the In Wheel Time car show that airs live every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central. From the Possum Studios in Texas, USA, it's the In Wheel Time car talk show. Coming up, John Saltinstall and a book about the famous Jackie ICKX. Later, look at the stories making automotive news headlines this week. Howdy, along with Mike Out of This World Mars, King Conrad DeLong. We always need more Jeff Zekin. I'm Don Armstrong. Thanks so much for joining us. And we're going to get right to our first guest here. John Saltinstall has written a book, Jackie ICKX, his Authorized Competition History. John, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you, Don, and thank you for inviting me on. Great to talk to you, gentlemen.
Well, it sounds to me like you're from East Texas based on your accent. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much each from you. I'm over in England. I'm at the middle part of England.
What city are you in, John?
The nearest city that you might have heard of is Leicester. We're about sort of 50 miles from Birmingham.
I love it. Well, how's the weather on a Saturday afternoon?
Hey, we're doing well today, Don. We've got about 20 degrees centigrade over here, so it's pretty nice for a change.
Well, that's good. And it's not raining. And is it cloudy?
No, we've got blue skies for a change. For once, it's not raining in England.
Oh, right. I love that. Well, I have to tell you, I'm a huge fan of Wheeler Dealers. Have you ever heard of that?
All right. Yeah. That program.
Yes, I love that show. All right. Well, back to the subject at hand and the book at hand. And you've written a book about Jackie ICKX. I remember early on in the very beginning when I started really getting into car racing back in the 60s, a guy by the name of Jackie ICKX. I knew nothing of him. I didn't know anything of the history about him, but I knew that he was a racer and a very successful racer.
Extremely successful.
Yeah, and so tell us about his Authorized Competition History.
Well, the book came about. It was I'd previously done a book that followed exactly the same format on the great Austrian driver Niki Lauda, and that had been a book that I'd written really as a sort of passion project. That I wrote the book that I wanted to read because it didn't exist. The idea being that it would follow a rather unusual format in reporting every individual race you'd taken part in and trying to illustrate it with a photograph from that race. And I thought that having done that, I'd sort of, and that somebody thought it was good enough to publish and somebody else thought it was good enough to buy, I'd kind of tick that box of life ambitions and could go on and do other things. But I was very fortunate that it was quite well received by the critics, and it got some very nice reviews. And the publishers asked me if I would look at doing another one. And it had to be somebody whose career was eclectic and fascinating and highly varied, and also was probably not really engaged in doing it, because that's what would make it interesting. And for Jackie had fascinated from a long time, and he's also the favorite driver of the editorial director of my publisher, so that was kind of a meeting of minds. But for 30 odd years, Jackie's refused to get involved in an autobiography or a biography, really, because unusually for an elite athlete, he doesn't like talking about his own achievements.
Is that just a personal thing with him, or is there a reason for it? I'm sure you had to interview him for the book.
He's got a very well-developed sense of his own importance in the world. He says, because one of the genres that he's got involved in, he did a lot of long-distance rally races. He did the Paris-Dakar a number of times. He did about 30 of these kind of things. And he said, when you spent 24 hours driving across the Tenere Desert and you don't see another human being, or you drive into an African village where the people have nothing but would still give you everything they have, it kind of reminds you how unimportant you are. So he's quite interesting, because if you start talking to him about himself, after about 30 seconds, you realize he's talking about somebody else. He's talking about the people who made it possible. Excuse me.
Well, and he's been in racing. He was very much. My view of Jackie ICKX was always as a sports car driver, but he was pretty well rounded because he also did a lot of open wheel stuff. He had a decent Formula One period of time as well, but raced with some of the greats even, Derek Bell, Hurley Haywood and stuff, some of those ultimate race car drivers that those who follow racing, those names ring true. And ICKX is another one of those names that'll ring true with somebody who's well-rounded in racing and has been at the pinnacle of racing. What did he have? Six or seven Le Mans wins?
Six Le Mans wins. So until Tom Christensen, he was the winningest guy at Le Mans until Christensen eclipsed his record in the noughties. And you're right, as his career as a sports car driver is almost unrivaled. His overall win tally stands up with anybody's. A lot of success with Mario, of course. That certainly in the 1972 season, he had a hugely successful sports car season, sharing the works Ferrari 312Ps with Mario Andretti. But you're right, his career in single seaters was highly successful. He was twice runner-up in the Formula One World Championship. He was the European Formula 2 champion. He actually started his career as a trials rider, riding motorcycles. And in fact, one of the guys who he beat twice to the Belgian national championship was Roger da Costa, who obviously is a recent. He retired at the same time as Jackie did as a multiple motocross world champion, and spent a lot of time in the States. But hugely eclectic career. A lot of time in touring cars as well. Did a lot of hill climbs. Raced in the States in the at places like Marlborough in touring cars as well. But obviously a multiple winner at Sebring and at Daytona, as well as being a multiple Le Mans winner.
And the era of racing that I truly fell in love with, which was the Can-Am series. I saw he had quite a bit of success in that. Did he, when in your conversations with him, were there any cars that were more memorable to him that meant something different?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the Can-Am era, because obviously his era of Can-Am was 1979, the sort of rebirth of it with the rebodied Formula 5000 cars. So he was driving for Carl Hass's team with the T332 Lolas that had got the Chaparral prepared engines in them. And he loved driving those cars because he'd come out of, he'd had a couple of barren years in Formula One. And he spent some of 1979 unintentionally. He was drafted in to replace a French guy called Patrick Depailler, who had a hang gliding accident. So Patrick was out of racing. Jackie was drafted in to drive the Ligier Formula One cars. But this was in the ground effects era, and the cars were very hard suspended. A lot of the finesse that Jackie was famous for wasn't really on show in those cars. But he could, in the Can-Am Lolas, he could still demonstrate that, and he got powerful cars that were difficult to drive, but he could show his expertise, and he loved driving for Carl Hass. He really enjoyed the family atmosphere that Carl and Bernie Hass had in that team, that he said was very similar to the family atmosphere he had with Ken Tyrrell in the 1960s when he was racing Formula 2 matches for him.
And then, actually had a great relationship with some of the great names of manufacturers in motorsports. I believe he drove some of the Brumos Porsche products, drove for Ferrari as well.
He briefly drove the Brumos Porsche. He was a factory Porsche driver from 1976 onwards. And the legend has it that once you're a Porsche driver, you're always a Porsche driver. But he had a very good reputation and relationship with the head of engineering at Porsche, Dr. Helmut Boll. In fact, the Porsche 959 rally cars came about purely at Jackie's instigation. That Helmut Boll had been playing around with his own road-going car, and they kind of bolted the transmission and drivetrain off of the Audi Quattro onto the bottom of Bott's own 911, and Jackie basically said, this thing would be a good weapon to go and tackle the Paris-Dakar with. So he and Roland Kushmile went out and developed this thing, and eventually they developed it into a car that won the Paris-Dakar Rally. Not with Ickx driving, he came second in it, but he'd already won it driving a Mercedes G-Wagon. But his relationship with Porsche was such that he could persuade them to do all sorts of oddball things. He actually persuaded them to marinize the engine out of the 928, the V8 turbo. So they ended up plugging that into Tullio Abate built offshore powerboats. So he did half a dozen races in the European Class 1 Offshore Powerboat Championship.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
That's pretty wild.
Sort of way off the table of what, people would normally know him for.
And did he ever do Pikes Peak?
No, not to my knowledge. I don't think he did Pikes Peak. He was a Ford man originally. He was very well associated with Ford back in the 60s. In fact, he had he was given the first Lotus Cortina that was ever imported into Europe, that he hill climbed very successfully in the from about 1963, 64, 65, 66.
And he also had a Le Mans win in a Ford GT40, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely right, 1969, famous win where he had a bit of a disagreement with Jackie Stewart over the way that the campaign to improve safety in Formula One was going on. Jackie Stewart was very militant about it in many ways, and successfully so. Jackie ICKX didn't like the politicization of the way that it was done and preferred to do things in his own individual way. So whilst he didn't subscribe to some of the methods of the safety campaign for Formula One, he really disagreed with the Le Mans start, the traditional Le Mans start, where the driver would line up on one side of the road, run over to their cars, jump in and drive off, because quite often drivers were going off without seatbelts on and doors not shut properly and all sorts of problems like that.
And the slowest runner was in the way. No, I'm just joking.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because in 69, his protest was that he walked across the road and got into his car, and he did nearly get collected by somebody setting off, and he set off dead last, having buckled himself into the car and made sure the door was shut before he left. As it happened, he ended up winning the race after a really tight finish with Hans Hermann, and he won it by a couple of 100 yards. So he said if it had gone the other way, he would have looked a complete fool because he would have lost it at the start. But as it was, of course, it was a quite a celebrated thing. But he was very much seen as associated with Ford. Grady Davis of Gulf Oil had lent him his personal GT40 back in 1966 to run at Daytona in. And the only reason they didn't win it was because when the mechanics were prepping the car, they forgot to disconnect the heated rear window off the road car. So as a consequence, it flattened the battery 3 times, and they needed 3 new batteries in it. Otherwise, he would have probably claimed that one as well.
What is he doing today?
He spends a lot of time doing historic events, and you'll see him at places like Goodwood. He was at Long Beach only a few weeks ago. He will do the Le Mans Classic. He does an awful lot of bits. I think I mentioned Mario Andretti earlier on, but Andretti's probably the only guy I've seen work a crowd or work the fans as well as Jackie. I mean, he's phenomenally good with them. He doesn't, where a lot of promoters will say, I want to, if you're going to do this event, I want you to sign for an hour. Jackie's very much of the opinion that, there could be a guy who's been queuing for 3 hours, or there might be a guy who's flown from Australia to see me. Who am I to walk away when I've done an hour? So I'll stay until the queue's gone. And there was an event at Nogaro last year, which was over 2 days, and he was signing autographs for 7 hours over the 2 days.
Oh, wow.
There aren't many of the current crop who would do that.
No, there's not.
How much time did you spend with him personally?
I did about 40 hours of Zoom calls with him and 3 face-to-face meetings that probably account for about another 6-8 hours of it. A fascinating man, a very philosophical man. And quite a deep-thinking man as well. But yeah, hugely invested in the people who made his career possible, the designers, the mechanics, the the people who used to prepare and run the cars for him, and that's who he likes to talk about. In fact, we as a consequence of that, I deliberately made a point of, when I was doing all the captions for the photos in the book, that if I've got a photo that's got several people in it, we'll name all the people in the photo. So, for example, there's a photo from Daytona in 1972 where the Ferrari crew are refueling the 312P, and we've named every single mechanic and the Firestone tire technician and the guy standing on the pit wall as well. And Jackie absolutely loves that, because it reflects that it's not just him. He was insistent that because the foreword that he wrote for it, he was insistent that the foreword was called "We, Not Me."
Oh wow,
he sounds like a guy that you'd like to have living next door to you. Hey man, can you help me out with the yard? Yeah, come on over, I'll help you.
Yeah,
you get it done in a hurry too.
Absolutely. Excuse me, you don't expect that people with his record and his success would have the degree of humility that he has. It's quite revealing, really, just how humble an individual he is.
John, how long did
Judy Struthers knows him quite well.
How long did it take you to write the book?
This one actually took me about 3.5 years. Because as you might see from that, it's a big lad. It weighs about 6 pounds, and it's 606 pages, 350,000 words. It was only the pandemic really that allowed me to get it written that quickly. When we started work on it, I told the publisher it would take me 5 years, because the loud one took me 9, but I was doing that alongside doing a day job. And it was only the pandemic that stopped me going out in the evening that allowed me to get it written as quickly as I did, really.
What is your full-time job?
Well, until the end of this month, Don, I work in the finance industry. I work for a bank. I'm a healthcare lending specialist, so I lend people money to build medical centres and that kind of thing.
I got you.
But I retire at the end of the month, so after 41 years of doing that, so yeah.
Are you going to pursue?
Focus a bit more on this.
Where did you learn to write at your level? I mean, my gosh, did you go to school to learn to write?
It's weird. I had my A levels that I was doing when I was 16, 18. I did English language and literature but that was the last time I studied anything like that. But my jobs involved writing a lot of reports, and I've always enjoyed writing, and I'm a bit of a sort of pernickety person when it comes to grammar and everything, and I spot things when they're not, it leaps out off the page at you when you read something wrong in the press. But it's something that I enjoy. The writing is actually quite easy. The research is what's difficult,
yes.
And it's the difficult bits that's the fun, really. But yeah, writing 1,000 or so words a night is not too much of a challenge when you get your research right.
Yeah, yeah.
So you said he goes to Goodwood. Is he still not competitively driving, but still driving at speed at some of these events?
Yeah, he will. He'll demonstrate things at pretty much not at full racing speed, but cracking on for that way. And he'll drive all of the machinery that he was driving in period. I mean, he's 78 years old, and he's always up for new experiences and adventures.
How cool is that?
That's what I like to hear. Yeah, absolutely.
And living life to the full.
There's a photo in the back of the book where it talks about his sort of life outside the cockpit. And a couple of years ago, he befriended a fellow called Thomas Bupendorfer, who is he's a free climber. These guys who climb rock faces without any equipment and one finger holds and that sort of thing.
Huh.
And Bupendorfer asked him if he'd ever done any climbing, and Jackie said, "No, I haven't." Well, would you like to have a go? Yeah, we'll give it a go. So Bupendorfer climbed a rock face called the Tête de Chien, which is the big open mountain that's behind Monte Carlo. And I've got a photo that's taken by Bupendorfer from the top of it, looking back down the slope, and there's Jackie 3/4 of the way up it on the end of the one rope that Bupendorfer's dragged up behind him. and Jackie's wearing a polo shirt and a pair of chinos and some trainers, and he hasn't got gloves on and he hasn't got a helmet on, and that's about the concession to it. And he just, at 76 years of age, he did that.
Wow.
Gotta love it.
Man.
John, it is a true.
I'm thinking, I'll have a bit of that.
Yeah, exactly. If we could only be so lucky. John, it's great to talk to you, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure, and we wish you the best of successes with your book, Jackie ICKX, his Authorized Competition History. And enjoy the nice weather while you got it.
I will indeed. Thanks, Don. I'm making the most of it. If anybody's interested in looking up the book, they'll find it online pretty much by typing in what you've just said, or they can have a look at the publisher's site, which is Evro, EVRO publishing.com.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
John, thanks again. Best of luck, and have a great day.
And yourself. Thanks for having me on, gentlemen. It's been a delight speaking to you.
Thank you.
Very, very interesting.
Very much
What
so.
a life Mr. X has led.
No kidding. All right. Let's see. Why don't we do something completely different?
Chasing possums?
Have I missed something of yours that I need to get in?
I think you got it all.
Did we get it all in?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got,
you let us speak a little bit.
Go wear your lawn skirt.
your lawn skirt. U.S. light vehicle sales are forecast to rise 18 to 20% in May. As retail selection improves, consumer incentives rebound, and automakers fill a backlog of fleet orders. Toyota division snapped a 4-month-long losing streak. Honda Motors surged again. U.S. sales rose for the 10th straight month in May at Hyundai and Kia, helped by rising inventory and incentives and sharply higher fleet deliveries. Retail inventory, I thought you'd like to know this, stood at 1.3 million in May, up 48% from a year ago. J.D. Power and LMC Automotive forecast Toyota, Kia, Honda, Lexus, BMW, Subaru, Land Rover, Hyundai, Cadillac, and Nissan had the industry's leanest stockpiles last month, according to Cox Automotive, while Jeep, Infiniti, Jaguar, Buick, Ram, Chrysler, Dodge, Mini, Lincoln, and Audi had the highest inventory.
Said Jaguar.
Only by mistake. The software fixes that Kia and Hyundai are distributing to help stop a nationwide crime fad and hot wiring their older vehicles may need fixes of their own. Both auto companies have notified their dealers that the software solutions are not working perfectly. According to a service bulletin sent from Kia to its dealers in February, the company identified a compatibility issue involving vehicles equipped with remote start accessories. Another bulletin issued last week said the problem has not been remedied. A spokesperson for Kia confirmed that the issue persists, but the company expects to release a new version of the software update this month that's compatible with the subset of vehicles equipped with remote start.
So get your free Kia while you can.
Either that or get yourself a different kind of a locking system so it doesn't get a club or something. Do something. Thought this was interesting. The nation's top auto safety regulator is failing to complete defect investigations and upload related documents in a timely manner, potentially limiting its ability to address rapidly evolving and severe risks to motorists, a government audit found. In a report released Wednesday by the U.S. Department of Transportation Office of Inspector General, that sounds really official, auditors reviewed a sample of investigations conducted in 2018, 19, and 21 to determine whether the agency had adequate tools, processes, and resources to probe identity safety defects. The audit was conducted between May and March. Despite efforts to restructure its office, modernize its data systems, and enhance its investigative processes, NHTSA's Office of Defects Investigation does not meet its internal deadlines for investigations and relies on legacy information systems that impede its ability to conduct defect analysis, according to the report. In other words, whatever they recalled, it's taken them like 5 years to recall it when it should have taken them a few months.
Yep.
Morons.
It's the government. You got to remember that's the Mayor Pete, Department of Transportation.
The Mayor Pete butt
guy.
gig.
Yeah, that guy.
The record-setting penalties for Stellantis, $235 million, for 2018 and 19, $128 million for GM. It's all about them paying millions of dollars in U.S. fuel economy penalties. Thought I'd
To the government, who's only going to waste it anyhow.
Or either that, or just take it, put it in their pockets, and don't do things like recalls.
Yeah, you said it.
What are you trying to say?
They suck. How's that? Automotive industry's new normal might be characterized by lower inventory levels before the pandemic, as well as more of an emphasis on pre-selling and secure supply chains, according to a company called Cloud Theory. Both inventory and sales initially plummeted when the pandemic began, but when sales recovered and even surpassed pre-pandemic levels in the ensuing months, inventory continued to drop, falling below 1 million by the fall of 21. Inventories climbed back toward 2 million in the last quarter of 22 and the first quarter of this year. But Rick Wainchel, Cloud Theory's head of data and science analytics, does not expect the industry to get back to pre-COVID inventory levels of 3 to 3.5 million. I had no clue that that's what was sitting on lots before the pandemic.
Nope, didn't know.
That's way too many.
You know, you go to some of the dealerships around here, they'd have 800 to 1,000 vehicles on the ground. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Now they have 500, and 495 of them are white. What is the deal with white trucks? That's, you go past some of these dealerships, and it's just acres of white trucks.
Well, white's the most popular color.
But
they look
red, blue, green, and black. Are those colors not available?
Well,
What's the deal?
They've got colors that are called mott colors.
Mott.
But on the
Applesauce.
the white ones, they wrap so much easier than a black one, because you don't necessarily have to wrap the whole thing.
Oh, he's on the wrap.
That's a good point.
Just a reason to buy the white ones. Besides fleet sales.
So you can go spend another $5,000 on getting it wrapped.
That's right. But then a month later, if you don't like that, you can change it again.
I'll spend another $5,000.
Yeah, but the way they paint white trucks, they don't do it properly. That's why all the white trucks at Chevrolet peel paint.
Wrap it in
that's
mods.
because you said Chevrolet is the key word there.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Everyone at the Tailpipes and Tacos Cruise In at the Lupi Tortilla Tex-Mex in Katy, thank you for participating in the best cruise in around, and look forward to seeing you again. You'll hear about the next cruise in date right here on In Wheel Time. Next time you're in the West Houston Energy Corridor area, be sure and stop in at the original Lupi Tortilla Tex-Mex at I-10 and Highway 6, or the Katy location on the Grand Parkway at Kingsland Boulevard. When passing through Beaumont or College Station, stop in and have Lupi's award-winning beef fajitas and frozen margaritas. There's always a celebration at Lupi Tortilla. Lupi Tortilla founder Stan Holt and his wife Sheila are winning racers on the NHRA drag racing circuit and have a collection of hot rods and classics that everyone appreciates. Look for them at the next Tailpipes and Tacos Cruise In. The date will be announced soon and will once again be held at the Lupi Tortilla Tex-Mex on 99 and Kingsland Boulevard, just south of I-10 and Katy. We'll give you all the details right here on the In Wheel Time Car Talk Show and online. Donations benefit God's Garage. We'll see you then. You own a car you love. Well, why not let Gulf Coast Auto Shield protect it? Houstonian John Gray invites you to his state-of-the-art facility to introduce you to his specialist team of auto enthusiasts. We promise you'll be impressed. Whether you're looking to massage your original paint to a like-new appearance, apply a ceramic coating, install a paint protection film, nano-ceramic window tint, or new windshield protection called ExoShield, Gulf Coast Auto Shield is where Houston's car people go. Curbed your wheels? Instead of buying new, why not have them repaired? How about a professionally installed radar detector? Gulf Coast Auto Shield does that too. Get a peek inside the shop and look at the services offered by getting online and heading to gcautoshield.com. Better yet, stop by their facility at 11275 South Sam Houston Tollway, just south of the Southwest Freeway, and get a personal tour. Gulf Coast Auto Shield is your place to go for all things exterior. Call them today, 832-930-5655 or gcautoshield.com. The award-winning In Wheel Time Car Talk Show is available on the most popular podcast channels out there in 30-minute episodes. We realize our 3-hour live show can be difficult to catch in its entirety, so now you can listen every day to a convenient, fresh 30-minute episode. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Audible, along with a dozen more. In Wheel Time has the most informative automotive guest interviews and new car reviews, along with popular features including Conrad's Car Clinic and This Week in Auto History, along with automotive news headlines. Our live broadcast airs every Saturday, 8 to 11 Central on InWheelTime.com, the iHeart app, and on YouTube. Be sure to say hello when we're broadcasting from the Tailpipes and Tacos Cruise In, Autorama, and the Houston Auto Show, among others. Now, it's easier than ever to hear about all things automotive all week long. You're invited to join fellow car enthusiasts in becoming part of the ever-growing In Wheel Time Car Talk family. Don't forget those 30-minute podcast episodes on your favorite podcast channel. Well, apparently I've mistimed everything and running a little bit behind today.
Uh-oh.
Man.
So sue me, okay? That's a wrap for this week's In Real Time Car Talk Show. When you're online, check out our Facebook page, give us a like, tell your friends about us, and share our junk if you would, please. You'll get Conrad's Unicorn hunting features along with all things automotive all week long. Our chief engineer is David Ainsley. He'll be with us next week. Our marketing advertising advisor and video technical director is We Need More Jeff Zekin. The booking agent and podcast philanderer, Mike Mars. And along with Mr. Know-It-All, his royalty King Conrad DeLong, I'm Don Armstrong. Next week, live from the Lone Star Street Rod Association annual event in Granbury, Texas, Saturday, June 10th, on all of our In Wheel Time Car Talk outlets, right here on the Smoke and Mirrors Network, possums included, 8 to 11 a.m. Central. Have a great weekend, and so long for now, everybody. That's it for this podcast episode of the In Wheel Time Car Show. I'm Don Armstrong, inviting you to join us for our live show every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and our InWheelTime.com website. Podcasts are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart Podcast, Podcast Addict, TuneIn, Pandora, and Amazon Music. Keep listening, and we'll see you soon.